Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hello, hello, hello.
Yeah, no, sorry. I was going to say hello.
Oh, you
I was
start
going
then.
to say, think of the coolest person that you know.
Mhm.
Like visualize like as children of like
Yeah.
the 90s, 80s, who would be like the coolest person that you could think of?
Rebecca Lee.
That's like literally my answer. She's like beautiful LA actress, comedian, writer.
I know. I feel like I would have like stood next to
perfect
her with like
haircut.
my chubby Gap t-shirt, and I would have been like, "She's my friend," and like she's so nice, and she would never have said no.
Oh, she would have been one. I mean, she is. That's how she is. She invited us. She
I
found us through the cut through our when we were in New York
Yeah.
Magazine, and we were on her podcast. How the fuck did you bounce back? Which she does a different like theme every season, and we talked to her about how she picks those themes on the episode. But she's just like, I was watching her while we were recording. I was like, how are you real? Like that's just like I kept thinking like
She's
how are
like
you real? Like,
the epitome
smart,
of cool.
composed,
So smart.
gorgeous, inside, like just like well dressed, like pitch perfect, like outfit.
I know. I feel like she needs to just take my hand and like walk me down the street. I don't know. She's just so.
Come on, we'll go find some vintage T-shirts. It'll be
Right.
okay.
It'll be okay. Let's just cut your
Anyway.
hair and dye it pink. I mean, she's just.
Olivia's
She's
had
so
her hair
cool.
picked
It's
before.
so sweet, so smart. We had a great conversation with her.
She's
definitely
like the cool
check out-
camp counselor that makes you feel a little bit cooler by extension by like knowing
But
her.
she's so nice. Like there's something like she's not.
It's
Yeah.
genuine as fuck. Yeah,
Yeah,
she's just
yeah.
wonderful. Anyway,
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy this episode with somebody. Just know that every question I'm asking, I'm just kind of like googly-eyed looking at her the whole time while we're recording.
And she's an
this episode.
artist. Like it's so many things. Yeah, she's
Oh my
just
gosh,
fantastic.
I love her art too. Fatherless behavior is her art. We
Yeah,
talk about it on the
yeah.
podcast.
So enjoy this episode
If
with
I
Rebecca
felt
Lee. Jenny's falling apart
I'm
over there.
uncomposed about you, Rebecca. I don't know what to say.
Uncomposed about Rebecca Lee. It sounds like, isn't there like a poem? Something like a
Yeah, Annabelle Lee.
Annabelle Lee. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jenny is uncomposed about Rebecca Lee.
I am.
So enjoy this episode with Rebecca Lee. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling fresh start stories. Rebecca Lee is an actor, comedian, and artist. She has her own mental health podcast called How the Fuck Did You... which we loved being on. She performs her live comedy across Los Angeles. Rebecca, we are so happy to have you here today.
Yay, I forgot what I wrote for that bio. But then as you were going, I was going to interrupt you and be like, I don't know what's going to come. But then I was like, let her finish. It
We
might
kept
be
it short.
okay.
We kept it short.
I love
What
that.
is the next season of How the Fuck Did You going to be about, right? Because each season it's a little bit different.
Yep. So the first season was how the fuck did you get so confident? Which
I love
was
that.
all about confidence. Second season, how the fuck did you bounce back? All about bouncing back.
Yep.
And I don't know what season 3 is going to be about because I just do it based on like what I need in my life. And I'm so like the first season was for sure confidence because I, as a comedian, I see my peers on stage and they're always just, they radiate confidence. And I'm like, I would love to have that. And I don't know that I do. And then bounce back, going through divorce. And it really, I think, started coming out of COVID because that was really hard for me. I know some people struggled while in lockdown and while in that, and of course the entire world did, don't get me wrong. But I think me specifically, I am fine being inside and alone. I
Me too.
like being alone. It's lovely. Highly recommend it. And so then opening back up, especially after, the skills that we kind of, at least I learned, or the introspection that had happened across, a great deal of time, was kind of a reckoning for me coming out of it.
Yeah.
That
So
was a
whatever
long
you need
answer.
next is what
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know. I love the podcast. So I'm always and I'm fascinated by the idea of like changing your lens a little bit every season.
Yeah, it's really just, what the fuck do I need in my life right now?
Do you come up with the concept and then you look for people to talk about it? Is that how the strategy is?
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm thinking like, maybe it'll be money. How the fuck did you get money? I would love some money, you know?
Yeah. You know, I had a guy friend that did years ago, like 2016, no, earlier, like 15. He had a podcast that was called Mercenary, and it was all about like how people make money, because I am also fascinated by that. Like, just how much do you make? How do you make it? How do you live? So many people, Olivia and I, are like, what's their life like? How do they pay for their apartment? Like, I just want to know.
Totally. I completely agree. And it's also one of the things that like I think historically we've been like, don't talk about your money, don't talk about how much you make. And I'm glad that we're kind of starting to open that up, because especially like in the workplace, like knowing what your coworker gets, because usually, listen, we're women, we're getting the short end of the stick. So
I mean, I was fascinated. You talked a lot about the strike and the strikes that went on. And I'm fascinated because I think that this is totally off topic, but we'll get into it. There's so much misconception about being in the entertainment industry, and that like everybody has money in the entertainment industry and like nobody has money in the entertainment industry. And we have some friends that are like pretty high up in this entertainment world, like, and they were struggling during, the strikes and stuff. And so I watched, you talked a lot about this, but like, I was so curious, like how people survived that, if they did.
The strike or COVID?
The strike.
I'm like, by the way, yes.
Well, the actor strike is still happening. So that is ongoing, and that's my union. SAG is my union. So we are still on strike. And a lot of people just picked up jobs. Like I picked up a job that I had years and years and years ago to make ends meet, which is teaching art to kids. I love that. So I'm doing that in like an after school program, but it's just, so it's like still kind of in my wheelhouse. But yeah, people are picking up extra things, but there's not really any, SAG has like an assistance fund that you can like apply for, but they're giving out like $500, $1,000. Like it's not going to sustain you for very long, especially in Los Angeles. Hopefully long term it is helpful, which I'm sure it will be if they can agree on anything at all. I got an email from SAG that said they were negotiating like last week or something. And then apparently the execs, higher ups or whatever, were now offering less than what they were offering originally. Okay. So they went back even further.
Great.
So they're really awful, and they suck. Yeah. But writers' rooms are now open. So that'll probably be 6 to 8 weeks before any like scripts would come about or any the audition process. So hopefully by that time, 8 weeks, we'll have a deal. But who's to say? Oh, and no one. I think they said something like 87% of SAG folks don't qualify for health insurance, and qualifying for health insurance is like, I want to say it's $26,000 a year. You have to make that in your income, and that would include residuals if we had a lot of residuals, which we don't. I always have like checks for like 3 cents come in.
Big money.
Yeah, big money, baby. So yeah, the vast majority of people are making under 26K a year, and that's unfair.
Yeah, it is. But it's insane the way they've undervalued the arts and the writers and the actors, and very upsetting considering how big entertainment is and how important it is to our cultural narrative. I do want to go back to one thing, which is you said you were teaching art, and you do have a brilliant I love your design stuff.
Oh, thanks.
It's fatherless behavior. And do you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah. So fatherless behavior is my art brand. I would love to like branch it out and to do like other things. Right now it's specifically like home decor stuff, wall art, that type of thing. But that came about in COVID. Just having not done art for a while, just being busy with life stuff, and then now having all the time in the world. Being able to get back into that, and started with watercolor, started back into the art world with like watercolor, which is, I highly recommend it, especially with
I love watercolor.
Yeah. If you have any sort of anxiety or even like if you're not great at sleeping, things like that. It's a very, I don't want to say it's an easy medium, but it's very fluid, and you can make it as easy as you want. It's not like drawing where it takes,
I cannot draw. No.
Exactly.
No.
But watercolor, you're just pushing colors around on paper.
Rebecca, that's literally what I say. When I'm having like a hard time and I need to ground myself, I tell myself, go push some color around. That's like literally my mantra.
Yep.
It's interesting. We're building some activities into our book proposal that we're working on, and like building in some watercolor stuff, and because it's like, it's so spiritual, watercolor.
Yep. Yep. And I do feel like a lot of people are like, oh, I can't do art. I'm not an artist. I couldn't possibly do it. And it's like, no, I promise you can do watercolor. So I eased back in with watercolor. And then eventually I was like, hey, you guys, can you clean out your junk drawers? And I'll just like make stuff with it, because I'd love to use some of the waste instead of contributing more. And then the pills kind of caught on and people liked that the most. And so now I use mostly like collage style, and then expired pills and vitamins. And it's kind of like my take on a couple different things, but the pills being like the pharmaceutical and healthcare industries, just to kind of draw attention to that. And then furthermore, a lot of my pieces have like a mental health element to it, targeting like my issues, which resonate with a lot of people. And that's another thing about making art, is sometimes you feel really alone in the thing that you're going through or feeling. And then you put out a piece of art and people are like, oh, me too. I feel the same way. I want that because I relate to that. And you're like, oh, okay. We all are experiencing very similar things, and you aren't alone in the things that you're feeling. And then the name Fatherless Behavior came from, I was on TikTok and there was a beautiful woman doing, I can't remember. I think it was like a dance or something. And some fucking dude commented like, this is fatherless behavior, and was like so mad about it. And I was like, I don't have a relationship at all with my father. I relate to that and I like it. I'm going to take that word back because fuck you. I love it. My like, fuck you, I'm taking the power back type of thing.
100%.
For not having a relationship with your father.
First of all, like, it's your fault that you don't have a relationship with your dad, right? Like, there was like daddy issues. It's like, how about daughter issues? Like, you have the kid. We had somebody once call us in a comment like silly and shameless because of what we do, because of Fresh Starts Registry. They were like, these silly and shameless women. And we were like, we are silly and shameless. We don't have shame. Like, why would we have shame? What's there to be shameful about? And we are very silly. So I have a shirt that says silly and shameless on the back.
Yes,
I love it.
I love that.
Take it
Two
back.
Great things. Silly.
Exactly.
We love that.
Anyway, what is it like? You're in LA. Is that right?
Yep.
And what is it like there today? What's the weather like?
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
A little warm, but not a cloud. Typical LA weather, not a cloud in the sky. Probably like 70 degrees right now.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Nice. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Let me think about that.
I understand.
I was almost
that
like, let
slow
me
response.
check my calendar and see how I'm doing. Like, those are related at all. No, I'm doing well. I actually get to do a little bit of acting work tomorrow because there is like sketch work is not under the SAG contract that is getting negotiated. So that's why SNL is back. So I get to do my first thing in a long time tomorrow, which will be great. And then I'm getting out of town and going to a music festival in Vegas. Nice. So I have a fun next couple days. So not that doing things equals happiness, but it is nice to sometimes get out of your normal routine sometimes.
Yeah, no,
Totally.
It's true. Well, perfect. Why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as I was laying in bed last night, and as an artist, in many different ways, I was thinking like I take a lot of risks, just being an artist in general, especially being an onstage performer, doing a lot of improv, right? You're taking a ton of risks all the time, but not only that, like just you have to bet on yourself a lot in my career, and I think the more you take risks in life, the more you're going to have a fresh start because you're going to quote unquote fail sometimes. And I put it in quotes because that's not a thing. Like failing is not a thing. I've never learned from success. I've only learned from failure. Yeah. And so I was just like, oh man, the more you take risks in life, the more fresh starts you'll have. So I was just thinking of all the ones that I have, but I think the most recent one that comes to mind is my divorce, which was interesting. And I say that because I was only married for 2 years, which is not very long. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions on that. So I was married for 2 years, October of 2020 to October of 2022. And nothing really happened that was a big thing, which is like another tricky issue in a relationship, or when a relationship ends and no one did any huge, there was no dramatic thing that caused it. It was just two people who couldn't get on the same page. And I think that kind of started happening, or we started noticing it in 2020, in the beginning of 2020 as lockdown started. And I think the first thing that happened was my therapist at the time was like, hey, I think that you would benefit from going to CODA, Codependence Anonymous. And I was thinking about my youth and growing up, and I have a dad who is a narcissist, or had like diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. I have a mom who is a textbook codependent. Those two usually go together. Yeah. So the relationship that I saw was very polarizing. And I took on some of the codependent traits. And so if you are interested in learning more about it, there's like there's the criteria of determining like, am I a codependent or not? And there's one section that is a lot about control, which when I think codependent, I kind of think people pleaser, but that's not always the case. It's a lot about controlling the other person's emotions, reactions, responses, so that you are kept safe. And so the more I started going to meetings that were online, this was, during lockdown, the more I just started realizing different things about myself, about my past, about what I want in a marriage. And it turns out you're allowed to have needs in a marriage. Like, what?
I didn't know this.
Who knew? I know you're hearing it for the first time. I know you're hearing it for the first time.
We found out at about the same point, to be fair,
Yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit on my podcast. And so, okay, I now have needs. Great. I'm no longer existing in this marriage to serve your needs. I now have my own needs. Let's chat about it. Maybe they align with yours. Maybe they don't. So that's when we started couples therapy. We had two different couples therapists over those 2 years. The first one was like, she was fine, but there was no like real progress that was happening. It was a good sounding board, but she didn't chime in. It was just more like a space for us to talk, and she kind of stayed out of it, which is, I don't know. That's one way to do it. And so when I was like, there's progress is not being made here. Let's switch. And mind you, one of the things that kind of pushed us apart was he's so chill, and that's great. We love that. But like to a point where it's a detriment, like almost to the apathetic point. And this is not shit talk. He's a wonderful person. We're still friends. We still work together. But so I'm the person finding the therapist. I'm the one getting Rex. I'm doing the legwork. And second therapist was fucking great. She is from the Center for Healthy Sex in Los Angeles. I think they're based out of Santa Monica. They have a really great book. It's like daily, or they have a great email list too. It's kind of the similar things, but it's like daily affirmations, different like excerpts from books, self-help or otherwise. And then like at the end of each newsletter, there's like 3 things that you can do alone or like with your partner. And so we found someone out of there, and she was just so fucking good. Like there was homework, there was the hard questions. And through that second therapist, we really were like, okay. Oh no, you know what? The like one of the last sessions, my ex-husband was like, I'm never going to be able to give you what you're asking of me. And the thing that I was asking for was just more intimacy in general. Just whether that's emotional, intellectual, spiritual, physical, all of that. And he was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to give you what you're asking. And I'm like, okay, well, thank you for your honesty. My therapist was like, okay, Rebecca, it's kind of the straightest shooting thing that he has said in our, while working together.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that information? And so I was like, okay, well, I have three options. I can say, okay, I don't need to have these needs anymore. I can work with what you're offering. Or I can go, okay, I can hear you and hope that you'll change. Or I can leave the marriage. And I decided, it went back and forth so many times. I feel so bad for my friends because when you like chat the same friend their ear off about the same thing and you're like, listen, I know we just talked about this exact thing, but I need to talk about it again. And I need to hear you. I need that reassurance. I need to hear again. I need to talk it out loud. And so I went back and forth. And then eventually I was like, okay, this has got to be done. And it was interesting. Signing the divorce papers was the hardest thing to do in the process. And it was so funny because he did it so easily. It just was so, and that's not to say he wasn't sad or upset. It was just so representative of like who we are as individuals. I swear he could have been like writing a grocery list. Like it was just like, oh, all right. And here we go. And there you are. And I was just like, oh my God. It took me so long sitting with my therapist on Zoom and just talking through the thing and being like, okay, just take the pen. Okay, we're just going to hold the pen today. Like that.
Wow, yeah.
But once it was like sent in, it felt a lot easier. And I got to stay in our apartment, which, pros and cons to it. I tried to do it and make it my own. But it was less of a change than what he went through, which is very funny. Another thing is he lives in an apartment that I found on Zillow. Like it's just so representative. Like, and then when you're out of it, you're like, oh, I see these little things that like I didn't see before. And again, they're not huge things. They're not big dramatic things. You're just two different people, not on the same, can't get on, like not being able to get on the same page,
My
really
ex used to say, because it was similar, and I know we talked about it in your podcast, he used to say, so what, we're not on the same page. We're in the same chapter. And I was like, yeah, that's good. We're in the same chapter. But like, that's not enough. It's just not close enough to be on the same page.
Yeah, that is an interesting phrase, though. That's very interesting.
I mean, it was helpful to keep me there for a while longer.
Sure.
So, I don't know. I mean, you talk about it as much as you want, but I'm curious, like, you planned a wedding during COVID. And you talked about a little bit about, like, how you were kind of the doer in the relationship. You were the one that made things happen. What did that feel like? Did you feel very lonely in the wedding planning process? Like, because you were kind of the one that made things happen in the relationship?
Honestly, I didn't think about it really. There were just too many other things. And like, I love like designing a party or like, I love everything about it. I don't want to be an events planner because I can't do it for other people, I don't think. But like, I love picking outfit. Like, I just love it. I love picking out flowers. I love tasting food. And so like, he would come to everything, It's not like I had to drag him. He'd be like, okay. Like, I feel like there was an SNL sketch for the one back with Pete. Yes.
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's with Adam Sandler in it, right? Yeah.
He's in there's a bunch of them. There's one with Kim, there's one with like, J-Lo, I think, Kim Kardashian maybe, where he's just like, okay.
Yeah. They're like, here's your dad. Don't you want to talk? You've never talked to him before. And he's like, okay. Like, he's just so like, no, I'm good. Do you want to say anything? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And like, that is how it felt. It was just like, okay.
Yeah.
You planned it. Okay. And so like, I didn't feel lonely because I just really liked the process, but maybe if I had stopped and had time to think about it. But I think also maybe because it was during COVID times, it was a lot of like, are we going to be able to have a wedding? We don't know. It was back and forth checking the regulations and things like that. And we ended up kind of being like, fuck it, let's elope. And then later on have a party. So yeah. COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, can we go back a little further though? Because first of all, like, how long were you together before that point?
Only 3 years, which I don't know. I guess
that seems like
so it's 5 years in total, the whole thing.
So 2017 to 2020. Yeah. Yep. I mean, so 2022. Sorry.
Yeah. No. So, like, what was the impetus for getting married, and like, was he the one that like proposed, and like that, or is that something that you came to together? Because it sounds like you held a lot of the load of everything. So, where did the engagement come from?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people my age, or any age, I guess, but you start like sending ring things to your partner. I like this. And he did it, and he proposed. This is not bad. Like, he's a wonderful person. I have to keep saying that because he really truly is. Yeah. But like,
he's just not your person.
No,
like,
that's okay. He's a wonderful person. He's just not my person. But like, he proposed like in our living room, like with the TV on. Like, I don't know. It was like a very chill.
Right.
It makes total sense for him proposal.
Right.
Very like, okay.
Right.
Proposal.
Yeah.
Right.
And he was thrilled and I was thrilled, and there's a lot of emotion and all of the things, but that he did take the lead on the proposal and everything. It was a very chill proposal, and like, the more I get to know myself, the more I'm like, I'm just not a chill person. As much as I would love to be a chill person.
Yeah.
That's just not me. I feel things very deeply. It makes me great at my job. It's not always great in life. It's definitely something I have to see a therapist over, take medication for. But I do feel things very, very deeply, and I'm just not chill. And so, yeah, as much as I'd like to be, it's just not in the cards for me.
But that's a codependency thing too, right? Of like I was, know, shrinking yourself to fit and making sure that you have no needs and denying the fact that you're chill. Like, I think, our stories are not dissimilar. And I spent so many years being like, I don't need anything. Oh, you don't need to do anything to propose. It doesn't need to be this. It doesn't need to be that. Just because I wanted to make it easy to love me. Because I think I believed somewhere that I wasn't easy to love. And so I wanted, and so my control, my codependency, which I now see how I sort of white knuckled that whole relationship. It's all about sort of making it easy to be with me, because you don't really believe that. Why would they stay if you're your true self? For sure. Yeah. I also think like when I got in my relationship with my now ex-husband, I was coming out of an abusive relationship, a physically and emotionally abusive relationship with someone that I lived with. And so I had come from pure chaos. And my ex that is exactly who I needed at the time. That is exactly what I needed. A safe, stable, chill, reliable person. And that is who he is. But there can be a middle ground. You can be cool, calm, and collected and still in touch with your emotions. And you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah. I always say like my ex was not scary. Like he was never scary. I was never scared. I always felt really safe. And I thought that was I thought that you sort of exchanged that for like deep emotion. And so it was either like deep emotion or stable and safe. And I didn't know that you can just find somebody that is like nice and like good person and like also has worked through their shit and has a lot of emotion, but they don't have like, I thought it was a trade-off that you make and it's not.
Why do we think that?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I'm going to assume, and I was going to say this goes back to being a child with two parents that have their own stuff going on. You often have to hide who you are to just survive your childhood, right? So you can't feel the things totally deep. You can't be the wild artist kid that you are because it's never about you. And nobody really wants to listen or care about you. And so we perceive love then as just surviving and being quiet, right? And pushing our needs down. Yeah. So by the time we get to like 35 and we're like, but actually we're like a witchy woman who has all these like feelings, right? Like then and I know this was for me, my entire worldview was like thrown, because I'm like, wait, I'm not actually this brooding, dark, like quiet child. Like, I'm a really out there woo, like, you know, all these things. And, you know, for me, and maybe this is true for you, I was kind of like that at maybe ages 3, 4. By the time I hit 5, it was like, boop, like, you got to kind of like, you know. And so I do a lot of inner child healing work to try to go back to that little girl, because she was crazy, wild girl, right? So I don't know, how do you feel the relationship? And do you have, like, did you do a lot of healing about your childhood after your marriage ended?
I still think that's something I need to work on.
And we all do.
Right. Yeah. Like, yeah. I relate so much to that, the parents thing, because having a narcissist for a father, there's really only 2 ways you can do things. You can either do it his way or you're wrong. Like, those are just like the two options. Yeah. And so you end up doing it his way because, of course, you want love and affection. And if you don't do it his way, that's going to be withheld. And so I grew up like not being the person that I really am, like you said. Yeah. I think for me, it started more so like when I was so like a lot of this shit that went down with my dad started at the age of 10 for me. And I think that is the age where I started to have to be somebody else. So like middle school and high school, I really was not myself. I would have done more arts, and I was still in the arts, but I would have been way more in the arts than I was. I kind of followed in my sister's footsteps. I did cheerleading. I did a lot of the things that my dad wanted me to do. And I was in the IB. Did we talk about the IB program? I don't know if I talked about that.
No.
You know? Oh, it's kind of like Montessori, but for like high school. So it's like you're doing the same curriculum as everybody else from around the world. It's like you have to like apply to get it. I don't know. It's like a whole thing. And then you end up with like a shit ton of college credit, kind of like AP, but like a little bit different.
International Baccalaureate. That's what it is. Yeah. A lot of people at NYU did it. Yeah. So I'm familiar with it.
Yeah. So like I did that, and I graduated, and then my major was kind of decided for me, which it ended up being business, but because that was the world that my dad is, and that was the path for me. And I was like, alrighty. Right. I hated college, hated it. I went to a University of Florida, so a really, really big school where it was very sports and Greek oriented. And I was in the sorority for like, I don't know, a semester or 2. And then I was just like, this is not for me. I'm doing all these things because my sister did all these things, because I saw that my dad loved it when my sister did all these things. I graduated in 3 years because I was like, I can't stand it here. I would rather just like double down on classes and get through it. And so it wasn't until I moved out of the state when I was 21 that I started to find myself, and I moved to Colorado. Strange choice. Not that there's anything wrong with Colorado. It was just like, why? Did you know anybody there? No. I was just my boyfriend and be like, this seems cool. But it was there that I started doing like in the performing arts again. So I went to the Denver Center for Performing Arts. I did their curriculum. I started doing, there's a really good like college for film in Denver. I started doing like student films, and I had a teacher be like, if you want to do this for real, you could absolutely go do this for real. You just have to choose New York or LA because it's not here. And so then I chose LA. But it wasn't until I moved out of the state of Florida, where I'm from, that I really started to find myself. And God, it's so important to get in touch with your inner child. If I were to say that the 2 things I'm working on right now personally, it would be finding my inner child and finding more tenderness. And I think those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Because another polarizing thing, right? It's either you are tender and you get walked all over, or you're strong, opinionated, and a bitch. And like, there is no in between. And because I saw my mom and my sister, who are both tenderhearted people, get taken advantage of, my mom from my father and my sister's life, I was like, okay, I have to protect them. So I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to do the strong, opinionated, bitchy. I use bitchy because it's not really bitchy. It's just like what in your head, what you think is one of the two options. And so now I'm like, okay, there is a middle ground. We don't have to be on one end of the spectrum or the other. So those are the two things I'm working on. Again, I think they go hand in hand.
Well, what does Brene Brown says? Soft belly, strong back. And I love that. And it also goes with my personal motto. I'm not yet Brene Brown, but like I say, when like you give good to get good. And if you don't get good, then you've learned something. And so like, it's just all like but you know, so much of that, like you said, exists in nuance and exists in the middle ground. And you have to kind of be willing to like float along and be like, I'm going to give this person good intentions and my best motivations. And I'm going to give them, you know, a beautiful plate of warmth. And if they smack it away, like that doesn't harden me. That just gives me some knowledge. And you know, but that's hard. That's hard to sort of start living in. It is,
and we don't give enough. We do not talk culturally. This is my favorite phrase. We don't talk about, but we really don't talk about what it's like to be raised in a household walking on eggshells all of the time. And it is actually, I know now from a lot of the work that I've done, and now because I'm trained in hypnotherapy and all this stuff, and I've done a lot of this work. Yeah, it's amazing. And I learned so much about the nervous system. When you're raised in a household that you're constantly walking on eggshells, your nervous system never calms down. So you're in constant fight or flight. So how are you supposed to become a person, right, and know who you are and find joy in what you enjoy doing and be tender to yourself if you are constantly trying to survive, right? And it's not that we are consciously trying to survive. It's that we're subconsciously trying to survive, right? So our body is just like primally trying to get through because it doesn't know the difference between our dad being an asshole and a tiger coming after us, right? And so I think that it's so connected, that tenderness and the inner child. I mean, it all goes back to, are we worthy, right? Are we worthy of being loved? Are we worthy of our voice being heard? And I think probably like you getting up on stage and doing all your stuff is so healing to you. Did you find that like getting into acting was part of the healing journey?
Oh yeah. I think like, again, like my sensitivities are my superpower, and like both for my career and in life, it's so interesting. I bet you guys get this a lot too, but like, do you get people like come, like not even on the podcast, just in life, telling you a lot, and they're like, I've never told that to anybody before, or like some version of that
our whole lives.
That's literally why I got trained, because I had people coming to me all day asking me for advice, and I was like, I'm ethically not really like trained for this. Let me go get trained as a certified life coach, because I didn't know how to hold. I knew I could hold the space, but I didn't know how. So yeah.
And so fuck, I forgot what the question was.
No, about healing.
It was about getting on stage and healing.
Oh, yes. And so my sensitivities are, like I said, I think they're my superpower.
Yeah.
So it makes me a really good performer. It makes me really good. I started doing more like theater and drama. I transitioned into comedy because it was so healing. And it is something that like when we're going collectively, individually, as a couple, whatever, going through a hard time, watching something funny is really helpful for a lot of people. And it just is helpful to watch. It is to do. It's helpful to experience that for me, but also like hearing other people laugh and know that they're experiencing it. It's a wonderful thing. It makes my sensitivities also make me very good at like what we call like moment to moment work, whether that's in a play, on stage, on set, whatever, but like doing improv specifically, it's really one of my something that I'm very strong at is like being able to just be there with you.
Well, I'm not surprised, and I'm gonna keep going back to this, but I'm not surprised by that, because to survive a childhood with a narcissist, you have to be able to read the room immediately and know how to right. And so Jenny and I are the same. We can go into a room and read the energy immediately. We always joke, as soon as somebody comes on the podcast, within the first millisecond, we can tell how that podcast episode is going to go, right? And so I'm sure you can do it too. So it probably makes for you to be a fantastic, not to mention you're brilliant. Like, you are a very smart person, like, which is very clear talking to you. Now we've talked to you a bunch of times. But you just are very knowledgeable. And I think that you have to be very smart to be a very good comedian. And that's something that is like, I don't think people talk about that. Maybe they do. I don't know. But
people do talk about that.
People do talk about but you have to really understand people to be a good comedian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can read the room too. And I can, like, if I get a bad vibe from somebody, I'm like, no, I can see it from a mile away. Yeah. Even though nobody, and that's another frustrating thing about life, but I can only speak to living in LA specifically, is like, I can sense, okay, they are here to network, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you're here to network, you're here to network. I would love to do better at that. But, like, I can sense if they are here because they think you can give them something, or because they genuinely want to talk to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can see that easier than other people can see it. Yep. And so that's a frustrating thing, being like, how can you guys not see this?
It's lonely. It gets lonely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. I was just talking to my mentor about this and saying how when you vibe at a higher level than other people, it actually can be incredibly lonely, because you sometimes feel crazy, right? And you feel like, oh, wait. And I was thinking about all the great artists and people of our time. And I'm like, no wonder they all turned to drugs and drinking. Like, they were lonely. Like, they felt crazy. And it's just so interesting to think about. So after your divorce, you did a lot of healing, you got into acting. And so where are you now? Like, what's coming up for you next?
I mean, well, we're on a strike right now, so nothing currently.
Yeah.
But I think because my ex is also in comedy, I stayed out of comedy for most of this year. Since the last October, so a year ago.
It's only been a year,
Yeah, it's only been a year. But a lot has happened.
A lot happens in a year.
A lot happens in a year. People get engaged after, like, a month. I digress. I'm gonna start talking about something else. Okay. But I stopped performing because we also had a live show together that we started. And once, the split happened, but even before the actual divorce papers were signed, I stopped doing that show. He kind of asked me to stop doing it, which was, I think when you're the instigator of ending the relationship, you're kind of willing to give up more than maybe what you would want. And so, since I was the instigator, he was like, he was like, I kind of just want to do this show from here on out without you. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course, whatever you want. And now, a year later, and it's blown up too. It's like a very, very popular show in Los Angeles. I'm like, I really wish I wouldn't have given that up so easily. But I guess, I guess that's what you, at least that's what I did.
It's not your story anymore.
I don't know if that's an instigator thing. I think that's the story you told yourself, but I think it's the story of being a people pleaser. Like,
yes.
I didn't instigate my breakup, but why did I leave all of the furniture and the rug my brother got us and, like, all of this stuff because I didn't want to interrupt his household? Like, I think it's just that you're so used to deferring to that person because that's what maybe will make you feel the love one day, is if you keep deferring to them. And so that's the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. So I bowed out of that show. I just started doing live shows again within the last 2 months, I would say. And it's so nice. And I'm really finding my own comedic voice again. When you're dating someone who's in the same scene as you, and he's older than me. So he was already there and established before I was. And you feel like this person, you're just this person's girlfriend, you're not like your own person.
Right.
And so now that I'm not attached to another comedian, I'm like, oh, I get to find my own voice. I'm, like, experimenting with various show ideas that haven't been done before. And that's a very exciting and scary thing, because you're like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. It's never been done before. And maybe that's because it shouldn't be done if it's ever been done before, but we're going to find out. So it's like tying different things into improv and comedy that traditionally haven't been done. So, like, the last show I did was called Musicians Doing Comedy, and it was based on the fact that a lot of comedians that I know wish they were rock stars, and a lot of rock stars that I know wish they were comedians.
They were just talking about this on Smartless.
Oh, really?
With
what
Paul
did they
Simon.
say?
With Paul Simon, because Paul Simon was saying how he has a lot of friends who are comedians, and then Jason and Will, were saying that they wish that they were rock stars. So yes.
Yep. So I started like a live show, and I had like real musicians who've never done improv before come and do improv. I had improvisers play instruments, and we just all kind of meshed together, and it was really, really fun, but it had never been done before. So I was like, okay, I don't know if this is going to work or not. It was great. It was lovely. There were some hiccups, and I learned a lot from it. It was not as scary as I thought it was going to be, which is always something I feel like you discover when you do something new, is like, oh, all right, well, that wasn't, I mean, maybe just because I have anxiety and I'm like trying to predict what's going to happen in a space where nothing is scripted anyway. So there's no way that you could predict it. It's a very hard arena to even try to predict.
Right.
But so, yeah, I think my focus right now is just getting back into live shows. And I have a couple other ideas with like incorporating poetry into improv and more like music stuff. And so, yeah, that's kind of my trajectory right now, is just live stuff. And maybe that's just because I haven't been thinking of anything else due to the strike.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of my focus.
Do you
right
write
now.
also? I can't remember.
Yeah.
That's so.
Yep. So, writing, actually my writing partner is my ex-husband. But we did one, so we started a pilot, I don't know, years ago before COVID. That will be our like last probably like written project together. I have like a new writing partner that I'll work with, but
second person we've had on this podcast that has had that.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Their writing partner for the pilots and stuff was their ex.
Yeah.
Well, they were married and then they split up.
Yeah. How did they keep writing together?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So like, but like this pilot's too good to like, to give up. And I think I kind of probably learned from the giving up of the live show that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give him this pilot and let him take my hard work. Not that he's a taker, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yes, this will be the last project that I work on with him most likely. And then I have a new writing partner. So still doing that. Just staying creative in general is super important. And then doing like the internal work of, healing. And I still have such a long way to go. I've been in therapy since 2015. I have never taken any breaks. And I still have such a long way to go to like work through the trauma and be compassionate for myself. And a lot of that inner child stuff. In hypnotherapy, I have a friend who's a hypnotherapist, and she gave me a session, and it was a very inner child session. I'm curious, is that traditionally how hypnotherapy goes?
No, I mean, yes and no. So there's like hypnotherapy in general is just subconscious reprogramming, right? So there are a ton of modalities and a ton of different like schools that you can ascribe to. So I'm a neurolinguistic practitioner and a hypnotherapist. And so it's funny, as I'm talking to you, I'm like, ooh, what could I do with Rebecca? Because there's other things you can do. There's like time techniques, which I'm trained in. And that's basically going back to the root of when your first time feeling fear, shame, guilt, all these things were, and getting learnings from them, and then reprogramming how your body is filtering them, right? So there's like different modalities. One of them is an inner child. I'm actually doing my own sessions with my mentor as well, because I wanted to make sure I fully understood what it felt like to go through these changes. I just did an inner healing last week, and it does bring up so much stuff. It's really powerful when done with the right practitioner. I was going to say to you, part of like starting that journey is just keeping a picture of you as a little girl, like with you all the time.
Smart.
And just like looking at her, I actually have like a little handprint of mine I keep up in my room from when I was in kindergarten, like remembering that that's the same body, right, which is like a really weird thing to think about. Right. But, hypnotherapy or neurolinguistic stuff, which by the way, you would love because it's all words and language and like using that to reprogram people in a positive way,
cool.
is in conjunction with therapy is incredibly powerful work, because you can't really like sidestep the subconscious work. And so a lot of this, like, and for me, I did a lot of therapy too. And then I was like, there's still something here. Like, I'm not as successful as I want yet. I'm not. And like, there's definitely a worthiness shit with me too, with our own parents' divorce and stuff. And so working with my hypnotherapist, she gives me subliminal audios I listen to all the time. And like, even just before my ex-husband emailed me, and I was like, and like triggered me. Right. And I was like, I'm going to put a subliminal audio on with my like learnings that she gave to me of like, I am worthy, I am confident, right? And it like calmed me down, right? So there's the subconscious work is up and coming for sure, in conjunction with a lot of the other healing. And I'm also on medication too, right? So it takes a whole village of things to keep us going. Yeah, but I would say, the inner child stuff it's hard because it is emotional, right? It's really emotional.
Yeah. Yes. And I relate to being like, well, I've done therapy for a really long time, but like, there's a little piece that I need to, there's something I haven't touched on, or touched on enough. And that makes sense, because a lot of therapy is traditional talk therapy. I guess there's some like cognitive behavioral therapy in there, but like most of the therapy that I've done is just, we talk about things, but it was not trauma specific. I also have wanted to try, what's the I one?
EMDR. Yeah.
That one seems interesting too.
Yeah. That's supposed to be very powerful. I actually am like scared to do that one.
I have a friend too who's in LA, and she did some breath work with somebody who's local, and she said that was huge.
Yeah, she did it hypno breath work.
She did it for her like business coaching, and she had like gone to a business coach, and then she also did this, and she was like, it was for that business coach like wasn't success for her, but the breath work technique was huge. So
that makes sense. It's like, we're like, oh, it's just talking. But it's also like, no, like it's in your body. Like trauma's like in your body.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And your brain is in your body. Like it's an organ. Like it's all.
And you carry around generational trauma, right? You carry this from so many places. Yeah, no, for sure. So Rebecca, if somebody's going through a big change or a fresh start in their life, what would be some wise words you could impart to them?
Yeah. I would say like, you know you best. You know what's best for you. I know that when I was going through my divorce, I was looking to a lot of other people to give me reassurance, and it's wonderful to go to people to get their thoughts on it. But at the end of the day, you just got to dig deep and sit with yourself, and you know what's best for you. And my therapist was like, okay, let's talk about kind of like the pros and cons of each. And it was more like, what can you live with easier? Like, they're both hard options. One, you're going to pay a lot up front. It's like, we were using car metaphors, but it's like, you're going to pay a lot up front and less over time if you end the relationship. If you stay in the relationship, you're going to pay a little bit over a long period of time. And you have to decide which one is best for you. Like, they're both going to have they're both going to be hard in different ways. Yeah. So what can you live with easier? And I thought that was really helpful for me, because I think also growing up the way I did, there's an element of perfectionism in there. And it's like, well, what's the right thing? Yep. Well, what's the right thing? There has to be a right thing and a wrong. What's the right one? Yeah. And it goes hand in hand with the nuance thing that we were talking about. And I do think we live in a society that really wants things to be binary. It's either right or wrong, black or white.
Married or divorced.
There's no room for nuance. I think social media has unfortunately helped the polarization. Yeah. Because it's like, how are you going to talk about nuance in such a tiny capacity, box. Yeah. And I think just realizing like there is nuance and knowing that everybody is, when you're asking for advice, which totally is helpful to talk to people, but they're coming in with their own thing. So like a lot of my married friends wanted me to stay married. A lot of my divorced friends wanted me to get divorced because they want to justify their decision that they made in their life. Yeah. So you also have to realize like what they're coming in with. Yeah. You know, no one's coming in 100% neutral here. They're all coming in with their own stuff. Yeah. And then, but that's the major thing I would say for me that was helpful was just like sitting with myself, doing all of the quote unquote research, talking to people, reading the things, talking to the people, and then sitting with myself and being like, okay, I did the work. Now what is it that I need? What do I need? And it's not wrong to prioritize your needs. I think growing up the way I did, also being a woman in society, it's like, our needs are usually put last, especially I think mothers. I'm not a mother, but I can imagine that your needs are put behind everything else. And it's not bad to have needs. It's totally healthy and normal, and that's okay. And don't feel bad. And I think those are like the major things that come to mind. And having a support system, and knowing that like it's truly going to be okay and you're not alone going through it. You are not alone. If you need to be on medication, I am the biggest advocate for if you need to be on medicine.
Me too.
Get on medicine, man. It's okay. I know there's a lot of fears around it. But what if I get addicted? What happens if I need to get off of it? Well, if you're doing this with a medical professional, I promise you will be going slowly. Hopefully it's somebody who's going to start you with the lowest amount of the thing and then go up from there. If you want to try supplements first, totally cool. Then move up. That's awesome, but it's nothing to be ashamed of. And if you need it, you need it, dude. Sometimes it's situational. And you won't need it again. Sometimes it'll probably be a lifelong thing. And I'm fine with that. It's okay. You know, life is fucking hard, man. Life is hard.
Yeah, yes, 100%. We're big fans of medication here at Fresh Starts.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, what was the last thing that you ate and truly loved?
Listen.
Lean into the microphone, guys.
Listen. I don't eat meat. And I have walked down the aisle, the frozen aisle of like the non-meat, whatever, chicken nuggets and all that shit. And I've always seen these corn dogs. That I don't know if they're vegan or vegetarian. They're one of the two. And I'm watching a dog, my neighbor's dog, and she's out of town. And I went in her freezer because I was like, what's happening over here? I don't know. Is that a thing that everybody does when they like,
other
go to somebody else's
pantries?
houses? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. What have they got here? Yeah. And they had the corn dogs that I've never purchased because every time I've walked by them, I'm like, no, I can't possibly. That's too indulgent. I can't possibly. And then I saw them and I was like, oh,
$6 box of corn dogs.
yeah. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Because I didn't know. God damn it, are they good? They are good. So yeah, these frozen vegan vegetarian corn dogs.
Amazing.
That sounds really good.
Amazing.
Corn dogs are good.
They're so good. Corn dogs are so good.
Rebecca,
you are
so good.
Corn dogs. Yes, you are amazing. You're wonderful. You are a shining star, and we are so just happy to have you in our orbit.
Yes.
And that we connected about almost a year ago now.
I know, man.
But we're just excited to see what you do next. You are so brilliant and wonderful and kind and, just open to the world. And I think that that's the most important thing you can be. So thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. That was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here and we're so proud of you.
A Fresh Story is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at afreshstory.com.